All right, so today in class we read Romeo and Juliet, a tragedy or a tragic misunderstanding. And the goal here was for you to be able to dissect this literary analysis, find the argumentative aspects to it. So hopefully by now you've all done that. And so I'm going to give you a little bit of an analysis from my point of view so that you can kind of reflect on how you think you did with your analysis. Okay, so I'm gonna get my handy dandy highlighter out and I'm gonna just read through this as if I were analyzing it for myself. Okay, so the main characters of the main characters of William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet have long inspired audiences' pity. For hundreds of years, people have watched as the two characters fall in love and both heartbroken take their last breaths. While the play's end is tragic, famous lovers' death are the result of their own impulsive decisions. Romeo and Juliet were not destined to die in each other's arms. That outcome was not inevitable. Instead, their own bad decisions brought them to that terrible point. So, I need to pause and I need to find my thesis. Okay? So, to find my thesis, I need to think about what this person is arguing. Okay, so they're saying the terrible outcome was not inevitable. But is that our thesis? No, because it doesn't really answer the so what or the why question. It leads you to say, so what, who cares? However, we could say, instead, their bad decisions brought them to that terrible point. So this is an arguable statement. We could say, no, they're star-crossed lovers. It's tragic. It's just doomed to fail because of their family history. Or we could go through this essay and see what they have to say. But this is an arguable thesis. So remember, I'm going to write out in my margins here just to give you a little reminder. The The thesis must be arguable. Okay? So, in my particular class, one argument we have is whether or not mayonnaise is an instrument, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. Is that an arguable fact? I don't think so, but from your teenage SpongeBob point of view, it could be arguable. So, that's my analogy for the moment. Your thesis must be arguable. Okay, so here we go. Now we have our thesis. We need to find our evidence. What did this particular author use to support that thesis? When the play begins, the city of Verona is being battered by a rivalry between two important families, the House of Montague and the House of Capulet. Swordsmen from both families hurl insults at one another and fight in the streets. Romeo, the son of the head of the Montagues, sneaks into the Capulets' party. Here he sees Juliet, daughter of the Capulet, and the two fall head over heels in love. Even though their families would never accept their union, they are more than willing to throw away everything to be together, having known each other for barely an evening. Indeed, Juliet says as much of their love. It is too rash, too unadvised, too sudden, too like the lightning which doth cease to be, ere one can say it lightens. Okay, so that's obviously evidence, right? That's a direct quote. We like direct quotes as our evidence, so I'm going to mark direct quote. But what is the purpose of this evidence? What does this evidence do? Where does it relate? So, obviously, evidence is going to support a claim if we think about our point proof evidence analysis or analogy that we use, right? Point PPE, point proof evidence. So, we have our evidence. Okay. Or not evidence, explanation. We have our proof. Okay. But where is our point? Our point is that they've barely known each other. So we're talking about how they move too fast and they do everything too rash. So our direct quote supports that they've barely known each other Okay, and then we're going to move down to read the explanation. The sheer lack of care with which they pursue their romance is startling. Neither tries to find a way to reconcile their parents to the idea or even flee the city. Instead, they hurriedly marry in secret. Okay, so our direct quote is our proof. Does this connect right back to our thesis? This whole thing right here should connect back to our thesis. It should show they made terrible decisions. Okay, so I'm over here saying they haven't known each other very long. Okay, and they're willing to throw everything away. And here's our evidence. Yes, this all connects back to the thesis that they have caused their own demise. All right, ready? Let's do it again. As the play continues, the drama of poor judgment unfolds. Juliet's cousin Tybalt goads Romeo to fight. Unwilling to fight a relative of Juliet's, Romeo refuses. The situation deteriorated further, eventually leading to Romeo killing Tybalt. Throughout these events, Romeo simply reacts in the heat of the moment. He is not guided by principle or clear thinking. The result is that he is forced to leave Verona in exile, the situation that sets up the final deadly outcome. All right, so I'm going to say this is my evidence. Okay, is that a direct quote? Nope, it's a paraphrase, but it still works, right? It still supports a point I'm trying to make. I ran out of room. And the point is, in here it says, Romeo simply reacts in the heat of the moment. Okay? And the result is he has to leave Verona. Okay? So again, does that lead back to our thesis that their own bad decisions led to a terrible point? Okay, so he's not thinking clearly. He simply reacts, and now he's forced to leave. Yes, I think that works. All right. Juliet is shocked when she hears of Romeo's exile. In another example of startling miscalculation, she chooses to fake her own death in order to escape with him. She does not wait to make sure Romeo knows her plan. At this point, the play proceeds with a cruel irony that ends with Juliet and Romeo taking their own lives. So, this whole paragraph is a bit of a summary, right? So I'm going to circle it and I'm just going to say this is a bit of a summary. And are we summarizing? We're summarizing how Juliet takes her own life. Okay? So this paragraph as a whole is basically a summary. Evidence in itself. And it supports that they made bad decisions again. So we are constantly making these bad decisions. Okay, and these bad decisions are leading to our own demise. So I actually had to read this paragraph a couple times. Did you have to read it a couple times? This one right here? Because all of a sudden we're talking about how they are star-crossed lovers. Okay, it says the play features numerous references to the stars, which symbolize destiny or the absence of human choice and control. These references seem to support the idea that Romeo and Juliet never had influence over the paths their lives will take. They were destined to meet and destined to die. Indeed, the prologue calls the two lead star-crossed lovers, meaning lovers doomed by the stars or destiny. Romeo suggests as much before he goes to the party where he first meets Juliet. I fear too early, for my mind misgives some consequences yet hanging in the stars. Okay, so here's my question. All of a sudden, we're taking the other point of view. What do we call that? And what's the point? Okay, so we call that the counterclaim. And this counterclaim is there to show the other side. But for what purpose? Why do we want to show the other side in the middle of our own argument? Because then down here, the author says, but they don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so we have our counterclaim for the sole purpose of using it to support our own claim. And our claim is that their bad decisions their bad decisions brought them to their own demise. So we're talking about decisions. So star-crossed lovers doesn't support our decisions. So here we go. When Romeo hears Juliet's death, he cries out against fate. Then I defy you, stars. Yet she is not actually dead, nor is the situation controlled by the stars. Romeo does not know this, but the audience does. Juliet's death is not a result of destiny, but her own tragic choices. Despite some instances of pure ill fortune, most of the tragic events are the result of Romeo and Juliet's youthful decisions and haste. So, we're using that to say, I defy you, stars. Okay, so this right here goes against the entire counterclaim. If everything is star-crossed and fate is decided for them, why is Romeo defying this? Okay? In his defiance, in his urge to change his own fate, he's making this poor decision. Okay? His situation is not controlled by the stars. He's making his decision. And this whole paragraph right here is just a counter against the counterclaim. It reinforces the original thesis. Okay? I have to delete my circles because they're in the way. Okay, so now we have our conclusion. What is the first thing that goes into the conclusion? That would be to restate our claim. In short, Romeo and Juliet were not victims of destiny. Instead, the two stumbled into their own tragedy. Rather than suffering inevitable doom, they made fatal mistakes. The stars may shine above the events of this play, but that is not the true reason for the tragic outcome. Okay, so if I make this smaller, I would like it to go side by side. We can see we have our thesis that they controlled their own fate here and here. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You can't see my point here and here. Okay, and then we have our direct quotes and we have some paraphrases. We have more direct quotes over here. We also have a spot in here we are summarizing. Okay, so our evidence when it comes to literary analysis should cover a summary, a direct quote, and a thesis. But at the end of the day, we have to make sure we are presenting a point. We are using our evidence to prove that point, and then we are explaining. Okay? If you have any questions, let me know.